Welcome to Messy Business, the podcast about the realities of making it all work whilst juggling everything life throws at you. I'm Libby Langley, business mentor, author, self-employed since 2011 and still making it up as I go along, still occasionally crying into my laptop and still here for it. This isn't shouting strategy from the rooftops. It's about what's working, what's changing, what I'm experimenting with, all shared so you feel more supported and more human in your own messy business. Here's this week's episode. Enjoy. All right then, Mary Poppins, who's practically perfect in every way. This episode's for you. You don't have to pretend everything's perfect. Okay, let's just drop that performance layer right here, right now, shall we, my friend? Not because things are terrible, but because performing competence is absolutely exhausting, even when things are fine, right? This episode is about presence over polish, honesty over performance, and sustainability above all else, right? This is what really matters because there's an unspoken expectation in business to always sound fine. I realised that, over the last, maybe 10 episodes, it does sound like I'm having a breakdown, but everything's fine. Don't worry about me. But there's an unspoken expectation in business to always sound fine. And I really just don't like that. It feels like living in a vacuum, which I'm not sure is entirely healthy. I think that I'm not saying to dwell on negative things at all. And I'm not saying, I don't know, if things are good, right? But it's this lack of awareness, lack of self-awareness. Everything's fine, everything's shiny, look at my life. And it's like, I want to punch people like that, and not encouraging violence. But I think that there's a balance, right? Or that's certainly not my target audience. I couldn't be like that 24/7 because I'm sure you know me well enough by now to know that I am not like that. I get really angry about injustice. I don't like the kind of, anyway, whatever. No, I'm not going to go off on a total rant about that. It's fine. But I think stopped myself there. I think that it's important that there's a recognition about other people. Yeah? I don't know. I mean, you look at some of the stories of the people who are at the top of their game, and the ones that we resonate with and the ones that we really admire are the ones who've not struggled through adversity to get to where they are. Not necessarily. I don't mean that. I don't mean you have to have a sob story or a backstory or anything like that in order to be where you are. But I think you've got to have a humanness about you in order for you to resonate with people. I think that's really important. If you are Mary Poppins and practically perfect in every way, it's really difficult to engage fully, and you become a bit of a pedestal person. And being on a pedestal is, you're going to fall, right? That's the only, I don't know. It's a very difficult position to be in. And it's not to say you need to be filled with self-doubt or shame or, what a hot mess I am or anything like that. It's just, I'm human too. And you're human. And if we together are humans, then the world is going to be a better place. And I think that I feel quite strongly about that, actually, perhaps more so than I realised as I started talking. But I do. I think that there has to be an acknowledgement that things aren't always perfect. I don't know. It's cobbler's shoes, isn't it, I guess, because in that whatever we help other people with, that's often the thing that we're worst at. The cobbler's shoe I'm not going to remember the details, am I? But it was a fairy tale, wasn't it? Or not nursery rhyme, fairy tale. And I can't remember the details, but, the cobbler didn't have any shoes or something. There's children not have any shoes. Is that right? Made shoes for everybody else. I don't know. One of you will message me and tell me what it was. But it was something like that. I can kind of visualise it. I think it was one of the things in the fairy tale follows to Efteling. If you've never been there, get yourself off to the Netherlands and go to Efteling. It's just an incredibly beautiful theme park. So anyway, the point I am trying to make here is that being perfect is unrealistic and unhealthy. But being open is not necessarily about weeping and wailing, or blaming anybody for things that are going right. It's not also about falling apart. It's not necessarily even about struggling. It's just about being kind of capable, upbeat, on top of things, whilst also recognizing that there is other stuff. I think that's is a really healthy balance for things. And, even when things aren't bad, there's still a lot of pressure to sound like you've got it all handled. And you might just be comfortably moving along in your business. And that's okay. It's not perfect, right? It's not perfect, but also nor is it disastrous. And all of those things are fine, right? So I think there's too many performance layers that people don't notice. I mean, I know that our websites and our social media and whatever else we create are often the polished versions of stuff. But it doesn't mean that you're lying about things. It means that you're smoothing the edges. And I think that that's okay. I do share quite a lot, and you'll know that last 2025 was a really difficult year for me, personally and professionally, and all of that. We had a lot of trauma, we had a lot of upset, and you'll know how absolutely derailed I've been by the combination of the house renovation and my cat dying. I share all that, but I share it to a certain extent, right? You haven't seen the full meltdowns, and nor will you ever, because I saved that special thing for my husband and my husband alone. So you're not on the inner circle enough to be able to see all that. But what this kind of performance layer is, it's like a self-protection or preservation, almost, but self-protection. You kind of edit out the uncertainty, smooth the edges, you tone down the doubt, and you polish away things that sound messy. Now, I do not get rid of the messiness. This podcast is literally called Messy Business, but it's a curated messiness. I mean, obviously this, I plan this podcast, believe it or not. I have notes. But I've planned this podcast. It's, strategic. There's a point to it. There's a purpose to it. It's a marketing tool, ultimately. And I would never do an episode and just come on and cry for half an hour. So the days when I feel like that, I don't record an episode. It's as simple as that. But that is a performance layer as such. In a small way, right? You do it when you feel like it. But I can then talk about the experience and turn it into a business lesson for you, because I'm one of those people who can do that. But I don't think there's dishonesty with that at all. It is just kind of self-protection. But when this performance can be really, really tiring, right? Because if you are constantly performing, right? If you're constantly pretending that everything's perfect, then I think it can be really damaging to your mental health, probably, because it requires a real monitoring of yourself. And it's like you're gaslighting yourself as well, isn't it? If you share loads of stuff online, say, that's a certain position, and then you go you meet people in person, you just don't feel it. They can see it on your face for a start, and it's like, oh, you're not how I thought you were going to be. Like, no, I'm not like that. That's the version that I turn on for my public. And we do all do that. We do kind of step into a different version of ourselves when we're working. And that's okay. That's okay. That's perfectly normal and natural. But if that work takes too much work, then you'll find out that what you're doing is you're choosing your words really carefully. You're kind of really trying to manage your tone, and you're really anticipating how you'll be perceived. And all of those things are thinking far more about what others are going to think of you than what you're actually saying or doing or helping with. And that's really hard. That's a really hard energy to hold yourself in for more than about 5 minutes. And it's different from, not swearing in front of your parents or something like that. It's almost changing your whole personality, your whole mode for other people's benefit. And I don't think that that's right at all. And like I say, it doesn't mean you need to sit on the floor and cry for half an hour in front of everybody. But just saying, things are tough at the minute, or that didn't go according to plan, or actually this curated B-roll is not how I am at all, because I never dress like that unless I'm on show. And it's just like, the sooner you drop all of that performative stuff, everything is much, much easier, I think, I would say. Work feels much easier when you don't add in that layer of needing to pretend. And it's not, for me, certainly, the more I've stripped back the layers over the years, and bear in mind, I've been in business for 14 years, so I'm quite comfortable now. I've got enough evidence under my belt. I've worked with thousands of people, and to know that actually it'll all be okay. I've got enough empirical data to know that it's okay. But work is so much easier when you don't add that layer on. And it's not because of sharing more. I do overshare a little bit sometimes, but I also don't share 80%, I think, of how I feel about stuff. And so it's not about sharing more, it's about performing less. And it's about saying, do you know what? Things are rubbish sometimes. And then talking about that, because I know that you will feel that too. And that's why you listen to this, right? I know that. Either, or you just think, oh my God, what meltdown is she having today? But yeah, I want to be very, very clear here, though. This episode is not telling you, I am not telling you to tell everyone everything. I'm not telling you to process in public. Partly, sure, analyse and all of that. That can be really, really helpful for people, depending on what your business is, obviously. And also, I'm not telling you to blur boundaries. There is some stuff that is really private. There is some stuff that you don't need to share or shouldn't. I don't know, should. I don't know, who am I to tell you what you should and shouldn't do? But, that you don't need to share at all. But what I am saying is very definitely you don't have to pretend. You don't have to sound better than you are, as in healthier, mentally okayer than you are. You're allowed to be kind of neutral about this stuff. And what was interesting, I think, because the world feels uncertain right now. And so what I've observed is that the 2025 roundups that people did, got a lot of emails, and from some quite big names as well, and whilst people might have made money, and this isn't really about income here, but whilst people might have made money, there's a lot of, I need to simplify stuff. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to grow my business that way. I made a mistake of putting myself out there too much, and I'm going back to being behind the scenes and doing things. That theme was absolutely consistent across everything that I've seen and I've read. And I realise also that that's the people that I choose to follow. So they will share more things like that. But it was really interesting. There was far less, right, my plans for 2026, I'm going to grow this and I'm going to do that and do that. I haven't really seen that much about that. And another thing that I haven't seen is the word of the year. That's normally a really big thing in January. And I've seen maybe like one. There's certainly been no trend about it. And the trend that has been going around is 2016. So what life was like in 2016 and what you've been doing and a reflection. And so it's interesting that then was simpler times, right? Because it was pre-COVID. I'm blimey, it's not like 1986. That was definitely a far simpler time. but even 10 years ago in 2016, which I struggle to believe is 10 years ago because I don't know where all that time has gone. But it's interesting. The mode is very much for when things were slightly easier. I think there's a collective feeling about that. And so pretending everything's perfect it feels disingenuous, and it certainly doesn't feel on the zeitgeist at all, because that's not the overall kind of message of things. And I quite like that. And this isn't to say, oh, the world's, gone to hell in a handcart kind of thing, which it might be, but it's not about that. And it's not woe is me, everything's terrible. It's just, actually, I need to just be me. And if you don't like me, then we're never going to work together anyway, because it's just not going to work for a multitude of reasons, but mostly because I can't be myself around you. And I think that's so hugely, hugely important. And so when anything that you're putting out there, I would invite you to kind of reflect on whether it is genuine, yeah? Or whether it is toning you down, or whether it is editing out, I don't know, some of the beautiful nuances that make you, right? It's like podcasts. There's different schools of thoughts on podcasts, right? And some people go for raw, like mine is. It does get edited. It sound edited. It does get edited, but it doesn't get cut edited. So the one school of thought is you kind of just do it raw, like this. Or you edit out all the ums and ahs and the pauses and add in perhaps like chapters, with sound effects and stuff. And that's just not me. I don't go for that, but I know that's another way of doing it. And then the third way is AI podcasts, which I really just hate the entire concept of. And because that is, sure, they might be recorded, they might be created from your voice, but they're sure as hell not you. Because if you listen, I've never tried it. Maybe I should try it and to see what it's like. But an AI version of this podcast, it would be so polished. There would be so many finished sentences. You would not know what you were listening to. You'd be like, what's happened to her? I would sound like a robot version of me, which is literally what it is. So, you don't have to edit out all that uncertainty. You don't have to edit yourself like that. It's okay to just be who you are, because there is literally an audience for everybody, right? There is. Some people will prefer one, some will prefer the other, and some will prefer the AI version, and that's fine too. So my mind just went to a whole place about those weird robot things that, sex toys. But anyway, that's for a different episode here, right? So you're allowed to be professional without being performative. I think that's a really strong kind of orientating thing for you to remember. Professionalism is very different to being performative, and it's very different to being polished. Because I would say I'm a I'm a consummate professional, but I can't always get my words right. And both things can exist. You can coexist as that, right? So I want you to really, really think about that. Think about where you are performing, and not to a level of being a dick, right? I don't mean that. I don't mean really lying, but where is it definitely not you? And how about just stopping doing that? Because that's probably a good thing that you don't do that anymore. So think about that. There's a middle ground as well. I talk a lot about this comfortable middle. Big fan of comfortable middle, because there's always an average, and there's nothing wrong with being the average. There will always be people who earn more than you. There will always be people who earn less than you. There will always be people who have more clients or bigger clients. There will always be people who have fewer clients and smaller clients. There will always be people who are the leaders in the industry. There'll always be people who are new to your industry, right? There's always, that is always going to be exist, and you'll be on a fluctuating path somewhere along the middle. And that's all right. That comfortable middle really, really matters, this comfortable middle ground. So, I think there's a false binary with it all, actually, that you can either be upbeat and absolutely sorted in your life, or you disappear completely. It's not true. They're so polar opposites that there is this massive expansion of in the middleness. And it's a nice place to be because it's where most of us are. Yeah. You don't have to be the number one because that's quite a lot of pressure. The go-to person. Yes, being the go-to person for something really, really specific in perhaps a really specific area or a really specific geographical location or something like that. Yeah, you want to be the front of mind for people. But the go-to person, it's like, what the hell? In the whole world? No, thank you. It's too much, right? It's too much for most people. So why are we aiming for that? Why do we want to be the number one? Why do we want everyone to find us? We want the right people and that handful of people, or however many you need, to find us. And that's a whole different story, right? And so that's the middle ground of being completely upbeat and sorted and disappearing completely. And I think there is, in that false binary there of that upbeat or disappearing, there's definitely this third option, this comfortable middle, which is showing up as you are. It's the steady, honest, unexaggerated version of you. It's the view without the dramatics. It's just the you, right? Sometimes you're hilarious. Sometimes you're kind of really downbeat and sad. And that's because you're human. And so that's fine. As long as the thing that you're talking about is consistent. That's what matters. Like for me, business advice, business strategy, business guidance, that's what I do, right? At the point of you feeling confused or disorientated or a bit, I don't know what to do next. What would Libby do? That's where Libby comes in, right? That's where I come in. That's when you contact me and that's when we start working together. And that's that's kind of the steady, honest place, right? And around that, life ain't always rosy, and I talk about that. Sometimes things are so exciting. Sometimes I can't be bothered. Sometimes blah, blah, blah. But all of that is how you feel too, because none of us operates in a complete vacuum, yeah? And that's why I talk about the topics that I do, because it all comes back to this point of, I feel it's stuck right now. What would Libby do? I'm going to ask Libby. And that's how we work together, right? And that's it. That's kind of the pivot point. And so that's the middle ground. That's the middle ground that really, really matters. There are plenty of other people who are going to help you scale to 7 figures. I'm not going to help you do that. And there are plenty of other people who will help you start from scratch. I can do that because I've done a lot of that, but it's not the bit that I love. Oh, that sounds terrible. So if you're just starting a business and you're thinking of contacting me, do contact me. But that's not the bit I love, and it's not the bit that I talk to and talk around, right? You've already got a business. That's how you found yourself here. So that's the bit. And that what kind of makes the difference there with all of that is that better work is done without performance. Right? Because it's calmer. It's much, much calmer. It's more sustainable and you can continue to do it. And also your decisions are loads clearer, right? Because you just know. You almost don't need to make the decisions. They just happen. You just know if something is right or not, or if you should do it or not. And you stop adding all these goddamn bells and whistles in and a million things that you feel like need to happen, because you don't. You stop pretending that all of this stuff is going to make a difference. I've fallen into that trap so many times of I need 56 different lead magnets and blah, blah, and it's like, I don't. I just need to keep talking to people about the point that I'll help them and what I'll help them with and how it will make them feel better. And that's it. That's it. The power of me, not to sound too much like a wanker, but the power of me is me. And it's taken me a long time to accept that that's enough, right? And I have performed with all these other things with, I'll do a video course, I'll do these lead magnets, I'll do all these things, I'll solve this particular niche problem. And it's like, it's not that's the performing. And that's where the stress comes in. And that's where the, perfection comes in, and that's where pretending everything's perfect comes in, and it's like, actually, this is all making me a bit miserable. So I want me to be a lesson to you there, that you don't need to do all of that. Because another thing that will happen as well is that your communication will land more cleanly. People are going to know when you are the person for them, right? When they need you. And the relationships will feel more real because you're not, I don't know, just because you can do stuff doesn't mean that you should. Yes, I will repeat that over and over again. So it creates trust. Crucially, it reduces burnout because, I don't know, we're all knackered and we don't need anything that's going to add to that plate. And what the real magic of all of this is that you can make your work more sustainable long term. And I'm making the assumption that you like what you do, right? So making it sustainable long term is a good thing. And we want to do more of that. So let me end with this. You do not need to be fine to be effective. You can be, all right, reasonable. You don't need to be super shiny, amazing, I'm fine, in order to be effective. And you don't need to sound confident all the time either. You can question things because your own growth is as interesting to your clients as it is to you, right? There's nothing wrong with, I'm going to try this, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to do this. That's okay. You can share all those things with an element of curiosity about it. And you don't need to wait until you feel sorted because God only knows you ain't never going to feel that. Never. I mean, how old am I now? I'm 51, for God's sake. And it's like, I am not sorted. Really. Just don't think I'm ever going to be. And so I just think that that's part of life's sweet journey, that I keep discovering more and more things about myself and about the world at large. And it's all pretty interesting for, So you do not have to pretend in order to keep moving forward. You do not. You do not have to pretend that everything is fine, that everything is perfect. You do you, boo, and that is how you're meant to be. And that's the you that I love. Simple. Alrighty. Thanks for joining me again. I have been Libby Langley. This has been another episode of Messy Business, and I'm going to see you next week. All right. Ta-ra. Bye. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Messy Business. If something sparked a thought or started a shift, I would genuinely love to hear about it. Let me know on Instagram @Libby Langley. Until next time, make space, stay curious, and do more of what you love.